Hey, everybody. I've gotten a few messages regarding the, well, more than a few, I guess, right? Regarding the announcement made by the government of Saskatchewan yesterday. And they announced that they were going to introduce legislation that will force the Liberals, the federal government, to compensate gun owners for the loss of value of their firearms if they are taken by the government. So I'm being very specific there for a reason. Now, quick warning before I continue, there might be a little bit too much truth in this video for some people. I've said this kind of stuff before. So if you're one of those people, you're just gonna have to deal with it. So we're gonna explain three important things today. Number one is to explain exactly what it is that Saskatchewan is doing and why it's actually quite smart, why it's good for us. Number two, to do that, we're gonna have to talk about what Alberta is doing and what may or may not work there. And number three, it's also an opportunity to tell you, the community, that many of you need to exercise a little bit of patience. And I'm going to explain exactly why to you. Okay. To understand what Saskatchewan is doing, you have to understand what Alberta is doing, really. That's sort of how it works. So both of the provinces came out with legislation that obligates anyone who's coming to seize firearms, seizure agents, I guess they're calling them, right, to be licensed by the province to do it. Now, as a placeholder in this conversation, that only works until such time as the federal government ends the amnesty. Now, we're going to come back to that, so just keep that in the back of your mind for now. The province of Alberta's next initiative was to consider creating an Alberta firearms license. Now, this has become quite complicated, and nobody has all the answers yet. But remember, they're still working on it, so this isn't the end of the story. But where we are right now is the idea behind that is the province has jurisdiction over property rights. The federal government has jurisdiction over criminal law. So the issue there is that it's all well and good that Alberta manages firearms as property, but that ends at the point where the possession of that property becomes a criminal offense. And that's when the amnesty ends. That's what the result of that is. So that means specifically is that the province can keep gun owners from having their guns seized to a point at which possession of that property becomes a crime. After that, it's all bets are off. So meaning that all the government needs to do is end that amnesty. Then everyone that has these guns is basically in possession of a machine gun in the eyes of the law, right? At that point, every police force, no matter where, is obligated to arrest the owners of this now prohibited property. Now, are the police going to go door to door? No. But that's a possibility. And the federal government controls NWEST, right? That's a National Weapons Enforcement Team. That's a federal law enforcement agency. And some very unsavory people are giving the orders over there right now. I'm not going to get into that, but it's not great. And of course, NWEST can go anywhere in the country and conduct search warrants and raids and whatever, right? So all this to say, as it stands today, as soon as the federal government ends the amnesty, possession of this property, your guns, becomes a criminal offense. And that provincial license no longer protects you, at least as our understanding, as we understand it today. There are people working on it. Now, what Saskatchewan has decided to do is obligate the federal government to pay for that property that it regulates as prohibited. And apparently, that is both within the authority of the province and has been proven through case precedent. This is what I've been told, so that's my understanding. Now, listen closely. This applies to all firearms, not just the newly prohibited ones. Okay, so what they're doing applies to everything. So right now, if I were to die, my $15,000 or whatever it is worth of handguns would be taken by the RCMP and my family would be given nothing, right? There's no motivation for the government to hesitate for a second to confiscate firearms on, under those terms, right? Now, my understanding is that once Saskatchewan passes this legislation, my family, if I were in Saskatchewan, I'm not, but would have an open and shut case to be paid by the government for those guns. Now, how does this affect the buyback? Well, right now, the government has decided it's going to pay almost nobody. So if you need more information on that, we have videos on the CCFR channel for that. You can go check them out. And I suggest that you do that. In Saskatchewan, and I would imagine Alberta would follow suit, they wouldn't be able to confiscate this property without paying for it. Or they could, but could be sued after, basically. Now, again, listen to this. This puts the government in a position to make one of three choices. Okay? Try to follow me on this. Number one, they can just say, to hell with it, we're doing this. But they would be doing that while their lawyers, they got 1,000 of them, I think, are telling them, hey, you're going to end up paying for every single firearm sooner or later, because if you don't, you'll be facing tens of thousands of individual lawsuits, even in small claims court, for the value of these firearms. And we would have to send representation to every one of these courts across the country only to lose in the decision, right? Because the provinces can do this. It's my understanding. So you're going to end up paying for these guns the easy way or the hard way. That's what they're going to tell the government. Federal government choice number two, they pay for all these guns. So as I said, in my video where I detailed all of these numbers, this would end up being a $5 billion program. And a program like that, it gets unpopular really quickly. Just like the long gun registry, if you remember. It had no positive effect on public safety. Everybody really knew that. And it ended up costing $2 billion instead of $2 million. And I think the conservatives of the day called it wasteful and ineffective because it actually was both of those things. And what ended up happening to the long gun registry even after $2 billion was gone? So it's likely the liberals would be like, let's not go down this road. It's not going to lead anywhere good. Government choice number three. They could grandfather everyone in the country so that they could keep and use their firearms, and keep the value in them. Again, before you lose your mind over that, this is what we need to get through to a point where we can get a proper government in that will act sensibly and fairly with gun owners. And that's really the only way that we can ensure that the next generation can inherit our guns and use them, own them and use them legally, right? So, and that's important. So we got to get to another election. That's our next shot. So in fact, this strategy isn't about bowing down to the government and making it about compensation. It's actually both undermining the program in its entirety, and in the interim, if you live in Saskatchewan and this program goes ahead, let's say, you may be able to sue the government yourself, which would cause them problems, is a lot of fun, and you'll get paid, right? So at the very least. So I'll finish up with this. As I've said countless times, in our system, the federal government has almost unlimited power, okay? We've never had that demonstrated to us because we've never had governments historically that were so malevolent and so morally vacuous, right, that we even needed to worry about it. And that's why everyone is in disbelief. That's why nobody really understands the situation we're actually in, understands why this is such a hard problem to solve. But here we are. I mean, man, look at the UK, right? They have the same system. In fact, that's where we got our system from. And look what's going on there. So I'm asking you to keep in mind that you have a lot of people working really, really hard to find a solution to all this, or at least to find tactics to delay it so we can hold it off past another election. Because the only real solution to this, if you want to keep the country intact, is a political or a legal solution. And those have been really difficult to come by, okay? So take it from someone who's directly involved in this whole thing every single day. There are no easy solutions here. I promise you that. So if something you hear that people are doing doesn't make sense to you, don't use that as an excuse to lash out at your own side, because that's not helping, man. You're just undermining us. So I just want you to give that some thought. Just people are doing things for a reason over here, okay? Anyway, I hope all this makes sense and it's helped everyone understand what it is that Saskatchewan and Alberta and groups like ours are trying to do here. Anyway, I've said enough. Thanks for your time. Keep up the fight. It's not time to give up, and we will see you soon.